Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the EOB Podcast. So, in the last podcast, we talked about the two new releases, which is Life of the Party, the new Melissa McCarthy movie, and the thriller starring Gabrielle Union. Let's see how those two movies did in their opening frames. Okay, before we get to them, let's start off with the top movie at the box office, which is Avengers Infinity War, the third Avengers movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It pulled in about 62 million over the weekend, a 46% drop off from the previous weekend, and the domestic gross so far is 547. And the movie, as I said, is open in China last week and or last Friday, and it pulled in about 200 million over the weekend, which is only second to Fast and the Furious, 213 million. So it has the second highest opening in China ever for a movie, so which is pretty good. It's accumulating all these accolades. The movie that's fastest to a billion, I guess, and then it has the record 258 million opening domestically, which is which broke The Force Awakens 248 million. So it's a record-breaking movie in a lot of ways, like in China, second highest opening ever, right? And domestically, right here is the highest opening, fastest to a billion worldwide, right? So yeah, it keeps on going, and like I say, it follows Black Panther. The movie follows Black Panther, and that one was very well liked and very well reviewed. And I guess, like I say, the halo effect from the previous movie carries on to the next one, which is the Avengers Infinity War, right? And of course, this movie benefited from a strong villain, Thanos, right? I believe it's played by Josh Brolin. Yeah, Thanos, which is not like the the second Avengers movie, which is Ultron, the robot that's trying to take over the world. But this one is more, it's bigger. The scale is bigger because this movie has, in addition to the Avengers, it has like Guardians of the Galaxy. Black Panther is in it as well, and Spider-Man. So all the characters from the other Marvel movies gather here, and it's not just the Avengers. It's Ant-Man, like I say, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a very popular sub-franchise, I believe, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, spoiler alert, Infinity War is just the first part of a two-parter, and I believe they're going to continue the story, maybe in the other movies, not the Avengers movie, or could be the Avengers movie, or it could carry on. It could be like a long-fought war, which go on to the individual movies of the individual superheroes, and then they're going to accumulate, perhaps in the the next Avengers movie. So Infinity Wars Part 2. Look forward to it. All right. Let's move on to our second on the list, which is one of the new releases. Life of the Party is the Melissa McCarthy comedy, R-rated comedy. Let's see. She co-wrote the movie with her husband, Bal Falcone, or is it Bal Falcone? Whatever, right? Directed by Falcone. They previously teamed up with Tammy. Reviews were poor, but it managed to open well. I mean, we're talking about Tammy here. And and I believe they also team up with The Boss as well. So Tammy opened to 21 million. The Boss opened to about 23 million. And this one, Life of the Party, opened to 18.5 million. So as you can see, the team up, when Sen and I were talking about her movies, right? The Boss and Tammy, they were very poorly reviewed, and we said that they shouldn't team up together anymore. But hey, of course, they managed to defy convention. They opened decent and they gross decent, but not as well as some of their, like Melissa McCarthy's biggest hits. But I guess they found sort of a niche that, movies that those two can write and work together, and they continue on. And Life of the Party is the latest one. So the reviews for Life of the Party is poor, but I guess better than Tammy. 40% at Rotten Tomatoes. And, at 18.5 million is the lowest opening for a Melissa McCarthy comedy. Remember, like I said, that those two shouldn't work together, but the opening for 18 million opening is still pretty good, but not as high as her movies when she's working with more, I guess, different people, different directors other than her husband. So 18.5 million is a decent opening for Life of the Party, and I don't think this movie cost that much to make. And who knows? I guess, or no, this is not an R-rated comedy. It's a PG-13 comedy, rated comedy. So it's more accessible, I guess. It's open up the field to younger people, age 13 or higher and higher. So this might do better in the long run than her other comedies, but who knows? We'll see how how well the movie carries on, in subsequent weeks. All right. So that's Life of the Party. Let's move on to number 3, which is the other movie that opened last week. It is Breaking In, the Gabriel Union movie thriller. Oh, before I get to that, before I get to Breaking In, Life of the Party, I said could open to somewhere in the 20 to 25 million range, which is kind of similar to her other movies, like for example, The Boss and Tammy. Right? They open to about that much, but this one's actually lower. Maybe because it's PG-13. Maybe they biting I guess the comedy or had been tapered down a bit, so it's not as raunchy as her previous movie. Maybe that we're seeing that lower amount, or it could be like whatever is in theaters because it's Mother's Day. They made it PG-13 for Mother's Day. But I believe it's also because of Infinity War as well, and other movies in theaters. All right, let's get back to Breaking In. Stars Gabrielle Union as a mom whose dad has died, and she went with her son and daughter, to that house that her late father left behind, and discovered that it's pretty high tech, has this alarm system, and then bad guys showed up, took her kids hostage, and then she turned into this superhero and dispatching the bad guys in house. Reviews are even worse than Life of the Party, 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. But again, I guess this movie got buoyed up, like I said, the African American audience, usually tend to support their movies, and I guess this one is different, different enough, because I thought the production value was kind of low, but what do I know, right? I'm not the target audience for this. So it put in about 16.5 million over the weekend. I said the movie could open to maybe about 5 million. So that's how high I thought the movie was. I wasn't impressed with it. I thought this movie really depended on the audience believing in Union's character. This mom suddenly turned into this badass terrorist, taking on terrorists, all these moves, etc., and their suspension of belief of that. And I guess a lot of people want to see Gabrielle Union in this role, and I said that also Union, wasn't kind of like a draw, like this is probably her. She usually was in these movies in an ensemble, with an ensemble cast. She wasn't the lead, the title character, and this was one of the rare movies where she is in the lead. It's all kind of pretty much on her, and and her co-stars. There's not a lot of recognizable name in there. So for it to open to 16.5 million is pretty impressive. Because it is Gabrielle Union, and she was in some movies before, right? But like I say, most of those movies were with an ensemble cast, and outside of that, she's married to the NBA star Dwayne Wade. She's well known outside of movies. She is also known in the sports circle. Because of her relationship with one of the star players. So there's that. So maybe that's what's contributed to this, and also. Breaking In is not one of these erotic thrillers that they kind of flood the markets with, so it might be different enough where the target audience went out to watch it. All right, so 16.5 million, pretty good. Way more than my projection of 5 million. So I was kind of off there, way off. And but we'll see how this movie does in the second weekend. It could drop huge, like like we said previously. Movies target toward the African American audience are pretty front loaded, and we might see a 60 plus percentage drop off in the second weekend, but we'll keep an eye out on this one, or tune in next week and see. All right, number 4, which is the comedy Overboard. It's a remake of the Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell comedy from 1987, except the roles were switched. Movie put in about 10 million in the second weekend. A drop off is about 31%, which is a pretty good hold, considering right. Domestic gross right now is about 30 million. And let's see, open overseas in a couple territories, and so the overseas take, the worldwide take right now is about 41 million. So then the budget I don't think is cost that much, so I guess it's a pretty good, a pretty good a modest hit for Derbez and Anna Faris. Yeah, so this is a movie I thought would open to about 10 million, but it surprised me. It opened to about 14 million. Mainly because I thought Avengers is going to, Infinity War is still going to be a huge movie at the box office, the movie that people would want to see. But I guess, like I said, counter programming. If you have good counter programming there, or audience out there that might not be looking for big bombastic movies like the Avengers, right? And Overboard is a comedy that enough people will want to watch. Like I say, it's turning out to be a modest hit with 29 million domestic gross so far and going, right? The hold is pretty good, so I expect the third weekend to hold on good as well. All right, let's move on to number 5, A Quiet Place, which I said is the surprise sleeper hit of 2018, because this movie came out of nowhere. People weren't expecting this movie to open as huge as it did. They were expecting maybe the opening to be in the teens, but it opened to about 50 million or so, and then it went on just to keep on staying in theaters. This is kind of like a horror thriller movie with alien creatures, starring Emily Blunt, and 169 million domestic so far, right? Drop off. No, actually, before we get to that, it pulled in 6.4 million over the weekend. That's in the 6th weekend. Drop off is about 17% or 18%, which is very low. So the hold is amazing for this movie. Word of mouth is strong. So 169 million domestic so far, and worldwide is at 269 million. And the budget is only 17 million. So hey, it's one of these hits that, like I say, this movie that came out of nowhere and it just blew out. Just like was it last year? Yeah, last year's Get Out, that movie, by one of the I guess comedy duo Jordan Peele and the other person, I forgot. But anyway, The Quiet Place is this year's Get Out, I feel. All right. Now let's move on to number 6. Is I Feel Pretty. That is the Amy Schumer comedy. It pulled in about 3.7 million over the weekend. Drop off is about 26%. So you can see the hold is actually pretty good. Maybe it is because Mother's Day is there and people, mother-daughter bonding or whatever, family, went out and watched all these movies. And so the domestic gross is about 43 million. And worldwide, it hasn't opened overseas yet. So right now, it remains at 43 million or about 44 million. But as we know, comedies don't usually travel well overseas, and this is more because of cultural differences. Humor doesn't really translate. Maybe depending, right? The budget for this movie is about 32 million, so it's okay. It's doing decent for an Amy Schumer movie, right? But we'll see, I guess, more of the profits coming in from home video. All right. Number 7, moving along, is Rampage. Is the Dwayne Johnson actioner special effects comedy based on very loosely on a video game. It pulled in about 3.4 million over the weekend. Drop off is about 27%. Domestic gross right now is 89 million. As we know, this is not Jumanji, right? The previous movie, which did really well at the box office. It has really good hold, but Rampage is not it. But it did really well overseas. 307 of that in the overseas market, for a total of 397 worldwide. So budget is 120. If it's just the domestic market, I say the movie is in trouble, right? It's going to lose money. But overseas, 307 million. For a total of 397 million worldwide. Yeah, so it's another successful Dwayne Johnson action movie. All right, number 8 is Tully, the I guess the follow-up to Diablo Cody's Juno. That movie, that award-winning movie. So this Tully is more about motherhood after the birth of the baby. The family issues, etc. So it's not as I guess uplifting as Juno, maybe. So Tully's more of a downer. It put in about 2.2 million over the weekend. Drop off is about 31%. The drop off is actually higher than I expected. I expect this movie to kind of linger in theaters, kind of get additional showings as well, but it's just not catching on. Even though drop off is in the 30s, that's not gonna cut it because it opened low. It opened to about 10 million? No, it opened to about it opened about 3 million, and from 3 million, pulled in a 2 million, it opened to 3 million. I expect people, the word of mouth, to catch on, because it is from the director of Juno, the writer of Juno, starring Charlize Theron, because these are people or kind of like the darlings of the indie crowd, but for some reason this movie is just not catching on. So domestically it grossed about 7 million. I expect this movie still to drop, because of low numbers, right? It's gonna probably gross another million or so the next weekend. It's gonna continue to drop from there, so it's not gonna be the success that Juno is. All right, number 9, Black Panther is still holding on. Remember, this movie kind of got a boost from Avengers Infinity War last weekend. For this weekend, we saw it drop, pulled in about 1.9 million over the weekend, 41% drop off from the previous weekend, 696 million domestically. All right, number 10, moving along, is a movie called RBG. It's by Mongolia. It's one of these limited releases that I believe expanded. Yeah, and a movie that I don't know much about, and but it's well reviewed, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is the Supreme Court Justice. And I didn't know that she was that popular that a documentary was made about her. And there you go. A documentary about one of the Supreme Court justices, and it popped up in the top 10. So yay, RBG. Good job. All right. So that's it for the top 10. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. We have 3. So the biggest one is Deadpool 2, the sequel to Deadpool, that R-rated comedy. That R-rated superhero movie starring Ryan Reynolds as the title character. And then there is Book Club and Show Dogs. Let's start off with Book Club first. This movie is targeted toward the adult woman audience. Stars Jane Fonda, Diane Keaton, Caden Spurgeon, Mary Steenburgen. Yeah, those 4 are, I guess, friends and fellow members of a book club who got their hands on 50 Shades of Grey, the trilogy. And I guess this is about people who are in the advanced age finding, I guess, a second spring, trying to rekindle what that they lost when they were younger, which is romance, pretty much, right? A couple of the characters encounter people from the past, and there's one character who tried to rekindle what they had, what her and her husband has when they were younger. So there's that. So this is about people in their advanced age trying to get that feeling back, feeling of love or whatever, right? So that's book club. This is I guess counter programming to all the big action effects movie here, but it's targeted toward the like the older crowd, right? The older crowd. So and it has some big names: Jane Fonda, Diane Keaton, Cadence Bergen. It's a comedy. It might appeal to folks, but again, the target audience don't usually rush out to watch these movies, right? So I expect this movie to open in the 5 million or so, because it might have limited appeal. But what do I know? Like I say, I'm counting on the target audience not just rushing out in opening weekend to watch this movie. There is an audience for this movie, women, older, and but I don't think they would rush out to watch this one. So 5 million opening for book club. Next one is Show Dogs, a comedy starring Ludacris, featuring the voice of Ludacris, the rapper, as a dog, and Will Arnett as a cop. They team up to to catch some crooks. Also starring Natasha Lyonne, Jordan Sparks, Shaquille O'Neal is here, and Stanley Tucci. It's directed by Raja Gosnell, the guy who also directed Scooby-Doo, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, and The Smurfs. That's what they put in the promo. So from the director who did Talking Animals comes Show Dogs. And this movie is not just about talking dogs. It also has talking birds, talking cats, tigers, etc. It's here. Talking animals here. But and the movie, and in the movie, Arnett's character and Ludacris, the dog, trying to infiltrate a dog show because the bad guys were using the dog show as a front to smuggle animals. I believe a panda. And they enlist all the help of other characters, other animals, to help them catch the crooks. So comedy, PG comedy, target toward the family audience. Yeah, family audience. We're talking animals. And of course, Will Arnett is not a stranger to these type of movies. He was in all these Smurfs movies. Was it in Smurfs movie, or the Muppets movie? Yeah, the Muppets movie. He was in the Muppets movie. So he's not a stranger to these movies, to these children movies, right? He was also in the Lego movies, Batman as well. So, but this movie, right? Is it gonna be huge? Maybe. Talking animals, family audience. So I'm gonna go with a 10 to 15 million opening. So I'm looking, this movie, because of what else is in theaters, right? We have the Avengers, we have Deadpool coming in. I think this movie will open to about 10 to 15 million because of what's out there, of the you could say market conditions. So okay, so that's it. Let's move on to Deadpool 2, the sequel to the superhero movie, starring Ryan Reynolds as a character who got, I believe, experimented on, got burned, and he has this special powers. But unlike other superhero movies, this movie, Deadpool, doesn't take itself too seriously. It pokes fun at the genre. It's different, and it's rated R. So all these bloods and guts, people's limbs got chopped off, is all shown. As well as themes, gay themes, I believe, in the movie as well. when it opened, yeah, so the first Deadpool movie opened to 132 million, went on to make 363 million domestically and 783 million worldwide. It could make more, but it was, I believe, banned in China. So that's why the worldwide figure is only at 783. And I don't think the second movie will open up in China as well. If the first movie is banned, the second movie could be banned as well. But we don't know. They might make concessions for to the film censors in China to make this work. This movie is bigger. The first movie, the budget was only 58 million, but they made that money work. Right, the superhero movie made for less than 100 million. That's unheard of, but they made it work. And it was a huge success for Fox. And Deadpool at the time was like the highest grossing superhero movie in the X-Men universe. More, way more than the mainline X-Men movies. So I expect this movie to carry over. The director Tim Miller is not back. Right now, the movie is directed by, Deadpool 2 is directed by David Leitch. He's an action coordinator, producer, and who made his directorial debut with Atomic Blonde, another action movie starring Charlize Theron. And Deadpool 2 is on tracking to open to 150 million. I don't know. Do you think it's gonna open to 50 million? Because 150 million is gonna be huge for an R-rated superhero movie, right? So I think it's gonna open maybe a bit lower. Maybe let's see. The first movie opened to 132 million. People expect a bump, so I'm gonna go with between that 145 million opening for Deadpool 2 because the first movie. Like I said, it was a comedy. It poked fun at itself. It wasn't that heavy. And it has, and the sequel has more superheroes. It has Domino, has Cable, that Steel guy, forgot his name, right? And then there is the teenage, Negasonic Teenage Warhead. The two characters from the first Deadpool movie, they're back in addition to a new cast. And of course, Deadpool 2 is going to lead on to X-Force, right? X-Force. It's going to lead on to that. So 145 million opening for Deadpool. All right. So out of the three movies, we expect Deadpool 2 is going to be the biggest. We're at 145, and then after that's probably Show Dogs. Of 10 to 15 million opening, it has a potential to open more if it captures more of the children audience, right? The family audience. And then Book Club, I think it's a small movie. Target audience won't rush out to watch it. 5 million. Okay, so that's it for this week's movie, and tune in next podcast to see how I did with the new releases. All right, until then, bye-bye.